Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Creepy Fox Podcast. This is the show in the series where we go ahead and retell and relive scary stories that have been sent in by subscribers just like yourselves. We got another good one for y'all today, as it will be covering Thanksgiving stories. Some of these stories take place on Thanksgiving, and some of the other stories take place during Thanksgiving break. Either way, they're sure to give you the chills. Also, hey, sorry it's been a while since I've uploaded. I've been getting a lot of people asking me where I've been. I've been posting about it, but we all know YouTube is very unreliable when it comes to, posts. Apparently, they have a hard time sharing my community posts that have all the updates regarding the channel. But basically, I went back to the hospital due to some complications with my leg, but I'm better now and I'm getting back to doing stories. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the episode, and I'll see you guys at the end. Enjoy. To this very day, I have no idea as to what we could have done to have deserved this. These situations are just occurrences that, for whatever reason, leave you in this absolute state of shock. Fear, really, that ultimately leave you at a loss of words. As the years have come and gone, I often return to this experience to remind my friends just how in one very moment, everything can end just like that. A reminder of why it's important to never take things for granted. This is the first time I'm ever sharing this online to anyone, and through the voice of the Creepy Fox, I tell you my experience. I remember this very well. 2005, Thanksgiving evening. I was just 17 years old at the time, and I, alongside my mom and dad, were visiting my grandparents for Thanksgiving in southern Texas, who live near the border. That night I recall having this overall sense of joy and happiness, as this yearly tradition was something I always looked forward to. My grandma always made the best stuffing and potato salad, but I made it an effort not to eat it throughout the year. This way, when the day arrived, it made it that much more special. That afternoon, we spent time catching up on life, talking about how I was getting ready to head to college next year, and even the part-time job I'd picked up, working for a family friend. It must have been hours of talking and good times before I realized it was time for us to go back home, a roughly 1-hour drive back north. With one final piece of pumpkin pie and glass of milk to fill up my already satisfied stomach, my parents and I bid adieu to my grandparents, and we begin our trip back north. This would be when it would happen, and it would forever be engraved in both mine and my parents' memory. Now, anyone who lives near the border today knows that there is quite a lot of activity when it comes to the drug trade. Lots of narcos traverse the area, and it's not uncommon to hear in the news about crime. Back in this time, it was fairly uncommon to hear of such incidents. And I mention this because when we began to be followed by this unmarked black SUV with all its windows tinted, we didn't think much of it. It must have just been this random person out for a stroll, albeit in this strange vehicle, so we thought. It wasn't until we realized that we were being followed that my dad started to get a bit worried. I remember he would try to drive to the side of the road to let the vehicle pass, but they wouldn't. There was even one point they almost bumped into us. It could have caused us to swerve off said road. That was scary, and although this was only a couple of minutes, what happened soon thereafter forever left us in shock. Out of seemingly nowhere, and I really mean this was just random, we heard gunshots, followed by the sounds of something hitting the back of our vehicle. That sent chills down all our spines, as my dad presses on the gas pedal and essentially now becomes a full-on NASCAR driver. A couple of more rounds were heard hitting our vehicle, and even one shattered our back glass window, and after what seemed like an eternity, the unmarked SUV pulled off into the dark and lonely desert and drove away, never to be seen again. We ended up driving straight to the police department, but that's not, of course, without my mom and I shaking and crying from pure fear. I remember my dad trying his absolute best not to show how scared he was, but I knew deep down he wanted to scream. Thank God none of us were hurt, and apart from needing to get the car fixed, we were just very thankful to be alive. As I mentioned, we never did see that vehicle again, and to this day we have no clue as to what we could have done to have caused this. We do believe, however, that it had to be something to do with the cartel mistaking us for someone else. It's just so crazy to think that one of those rounds could have hit one of us. An experience that I sure hope no one ever has to go through. Being an adult comes with its many perks. You're no longer bound by what your parents tell you, and as long as you follow the rules, so to speak, life treats you fairly well. I guess that's one positive. But on the other hand, growing up does lose its value. What I mean is that when you're a kid, you look forward to everything special, holidays being a huge example. I can't tell you how many times as a kid I'd jump for joy anytime the fall season came. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all that good fun. But now that I've babbled for a few sentences, I want to take you back to last year, 2020, Thanksgiving. I just returned from work, just a normal cashier at a large grocery food chain, and I went into my kitchen to eat the fast food I had purchased. You see, I was going to visit my family for Thanksgiving, but as they weren't really doing anything, and Thanksgiving for me turned into just another random holiday, I opted to be at home, since I do live in my own apartment. Anyways, after I'd munched on my hamburger with salty french fries on the side and a Jerry Coke to wash it all down, I stepped into the shower to wash away all the stress from earlier. I can't tell you how crazy people can be on Thanksgiving Day. While showering, I heard a notification on my phone. I saw it was my friends asking if I wanted to play some Cold War zombies and hop onto Discord. I figured what a way to spend Thanksgiving, so I said sure, why not, before getting back to what I was doing. Fast forward, I want to say 15 or so minutes later, I'm now out of the shower and I'm brushing my teeth. All of a sudden, I ended up hearing something from my living room. Seeing as I do live in an apartment complex, you do often hear the sounds from your surrounding neighbors. That was the main reason why alarm bells really didn't sound off just yet. But for some reason, I felt something in my head telling me to think otherwise. But like any naive person, I pushed it away and hopped onto Discord. Now, to get to my room wasn't really an issue, as the restroom is literally right next to it. That's why as soon as I opened the door, I jumped into bed, and then onto Discord moments later. Crash. I heard something coming from the living room and the kitchen, which are connected. This time I knew it was from my own living space, as it sounded way too loud to be coming from the neighbors. Therefore, I reach under my bed, where I keep my baseball bat, seeing as I like to play baseball with my friends on the weekends, and then I slowly open the door to my room. What I see going through my cabinets sent chills down my spine. There stood this random man, tall, about 6'2", skinny, dirty street clothes, with long black hair and a beard. My first instinct was to yell and tell him to get out, but my brain just froze. It's like time stood still, as I can hear through my AirPods my friends on Discord asking what the heck was going on. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but was really only like 5 seconds, I snap out of it and ask the man what he was doing in my apartment. He turns to face toward me, and when I look at his face, I get the chills. I could see pure anger and frustration. I let myself in. Be quiet and go back to your room, I recall him saying, as he returns his attention back toward the cabinets and begins reaching for a kitchen knife. No way was this happening. Sure, I had a baseball bat, but what if, just what if, he connected with a knife had he decided to get one? I wasn't taking my chances. I tell him once again to leave my apartment, but he says no, this time beginning to curse at me, and then grabbing one of my knives. I'm trying to stay as intimidating as possible, all the meanwhile he begins to get closer. My friends, who were laughing just a second ago, are now taking things more seriously and asking if they should call police to send them my way. I remember saying yes as I start to back up and now walk into my room. The man is still coming toward me, saying he was going to kill me and that this would be where everything ended. I didn't dare hold back. Once he was within swinging distance, I swing for the fences, so to speak, hitting the knife clear out of his hands. I then hear him begin to yell in pain as I run past him and then head outside, where I see a couple of my neighbors. They tell me they heard a loud commotion, to which I'm now telling them there was a random man in my house who tried to attack me with a knife. Needless to say, cops arrived about 5 minutes later, and after a quick standoff, where the man was holding on to the knife and not letting go, cops are able to apprehend the man and place him in handcuffs. On one hand, I was thankful to have made it out in one piece, but on the other, I was shocked and full of fear. It was until the adrenaline dump I had half an hour later that I was able to finally make sense of everything. The random man who entered my home was a well-known junkie who had already had run-ins with the law, who so happened to have been walking around the apartments that night. I guess no one really saw him, as this did take place in the evening and most people were in their homes. Anyways, as it turned out, in my rush to get into the shower, eat, and then play video games, I hadn't locked my front door. Yeah, I know. You can yell at me all you want and tell me how I should have locked my door and it should have been my first priority. But there was so much going on in my head. Honest mistakes happen. Besides, you shouldn't have to worry about some random stranger entering your house and then trying to slash you up with one of your kitchen knives. By the way, that night that guy was on drugs, which explained his strange behavior and actions. Definitely a Thanksgiving I will soon never forget. Thanks for listening, and happy Thanksgiving to all of my fellow Creepy Fox listeners. Please stay safe, and I wish you all the best. This happened to me on Thanksgiving of 2017, and it's an event I soon will never forget. Not so much because of all the food I ended up eating that night, but because of the frightful encounter I would have with him. So there I was, just your typical 5'3", 115-pound, short 20-year-old female, sitting with all my cousins eating food and talking about life in the dining room. I can still recall the rustle and bustle of the house as my family members talked and laughed as music played over the radio. At a certain point, I remember hearing my mom ask my Uncle Joseph if he could go pick up a couple of extra 2-liter sodas as we had just run out. I heard this and approached my mother, telling her I wouldn't mind going to pick up the drinks since I really wanted an excuse to walk off some of the food I just ate. I had really bad problems with using the restroom back then, so I always had to walk a little, just get the bowels moving, so to speak. Anyways, my mom thanked me, and so myself and my Uncle Joseph now begin the 5-minute walk over to the gas station where we would pick up the drinks. I recall as my uncle and I walked in the cool November's evening, talking about football, as we soon reached the alleyway that would act as a shortcut to get to the gas station. I'd always used this alleyway to get there, as taking the sidewalk in this street was very annoying. Not so much because of the detour, but because of all the foot traffic. Honestly, it's like any time you tried walking there, everyone and their mom is either walking their dog, on their bicycle, taking up the walk space, etc. Although, to be fair, I recall the streets were essentially empty that night because of the holiday. Anyways, seeing as I live in a very quiet and safe suburb in Middle America, nothing really seemed to alarm me. That is until my uncle and I saw someone sitting next to a stationary vehicle. A homeless man, so it seemed, holding what appears to be a brown paper bag, drinking who knows what. But let's face it, people who drink in public out of a brown paper bag are most likely drinking an alcoholic beverage. I really don't understand why they think that works, but whatever. As we pass him, he catcalls me, to which my uncle just gives him this very aggressive and intimidating stare down, which has the man curse something under his breath, and then go back to drinking. I did find it a bit unsettling, but I'm a big girl. Words aren't going to really do much. Besides, I don't think I would ever see that man again, as I'd never seen him before this. Anyways, continuing with my retelling, we enter the gas station little store, and my uncle and I head over to the back where all the drinks are. I forgot what drinks my mom had requested as we're looking, so I give her a quick call as my uncle heads over to the aisle of chips, to might as well stock up on extra snacks for the party. I'm talking to my mom when suddenly I can recall hearing the doorbell to the store chiming. I didn't pay attention to it at first, as I assumed it was just another customer, but moments later, this would all change. "Hey, I was talking to you earlier. Why did you end up leaving?" I hear someone say as I turn my attention to my right. There he was, that strange man my uncle and I had encountered in the alley. It was strange, so I end up ignoring him as I hang up with my mom and grab a bottle of Sierra Mist. "Don't you dare ignore me when I'm talking to you." I remember him barking at me with a voice filled with rage and hatred as I stood there confused. "Is everything okay over here? What's going on?" I heard my uncle say as I'm now backing up from the creep who was approaching me with his bottle of alcohol. "We're leaving, and so should you. Have a great night, sir," my uncle says, trying his best not to punch him dead on in the face, although this would change. You see, as we start walking down the aisle, I felt a firm grasp on my hand. It's the guy, and he's not giving up. Suddenly, I remember my uncle going into full-on protective mode, pushing and shoving the man, who then falls into the display. But that's not before I see something. "Don't you dare put your hands on her ever again, or you're going to lose that arm of yours." I couldn't stop shaking, as what I saw in the moment of the man falling had me sweating. The small pocket knife that had slid under the aisle of chips. The man tried to reach for the knife, but my uncle was able to stop the man from grabbing it as the cashier came over to help out. The drunken man does end up making his way out of the store, but luckily the police are able to find him just a short time later. We ended up giving our statements, and after we were all cleared, we returned back to the party, but of course, with quite a wild story and experience to tell. All because we wanted to go and grab some sodas. Gosh, what a strange Thanksgiving that was. This didn't happen on Thanksgiving Day itself, but it does take place during the week of Thanksgiving break, so it should still fit if you're planning a Thanksgiving stories video this year. Also, this still remains to be one of the scariest moments in my life. It really just goes to show you how far people will take things, and that's saying a lot. So, before I get into the incident in question, just a little bit of context is needed so we can get started with my retelling. For reference, this is from the perspective of a female. At the time, this taking place in 2013, I was 22 years old, and I was attending university in Southern California. Just about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving break of that year, my then ex-boyfriend and I had broken up from what turned out to be a very toxic relationship toward the end of it. It was perfectly fine at first, and I really thought we were meant to be. But then I found out how controlling he was. It actually started off very mildly, but what really cut the strings was when he started to threaten my male friends, thinking I was cheating on him. And then there was even once he said he would kill me if I kept talking to them. I'm not going to lie to you, but when someone says they're essentially going to put a cap in you and then laugh it off like it's nothing, it really messes with your head. For real, that could just be my entire scary story in itself, but I'm afraid things get worse. The next couple of weeks I recall he would text me and ask if I could ever forgive him, and blah blah blah. I ignored these messages, and slowly but surely it seemed my ex was out of my life. We now fast forward to Thanksgiving break. I finally have time away from school and studying, and I'm able to have time for myself. I remember taking the week to catch up on sleep, do some things around the house, and hang out with my friends. Such was one evening. I was hanging out with a couple of my longtime friends. We will call them Ashley and Eric. We had just gotten out of seeing a movie when we decided we would get something to eat at the local all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant. It's actually still there today, just under different management. I remember, just like it is today, how busy it was that evening, as we get put onto a wait list and are told there would be roughly 30 minutes of a wait. Not really a worry since we had all the time in the world. After about 10 minutes of talking and laughing, I excused myself and tell my friends I was going to head inside to use the restroom. I remember walking toward the back as patrons ate away at their delicious food and talked and enjoyed their evening as I started thinking this would soon be me. While distracted for these brief moments, I ended up bumping into someone in the small hallway that leads to the restrooms. I apologized, but then I looked up, and what I saw staring back down at me gave me the chills. My ex-boyfriend, alongside this awful smell of alcohol. "What are you doing here?" I can still remember him saying, as his warm beer breath pressed against my cheeks and all the hairs on my neck stood up. "Leave me alone, John. I'm just using the restroom." I said something like that. I was honestly hoping he would get the idea, and this would just be one of those awkward coincidences of running into your ex-boyfriend. But sadly, it wasn't. He proceeds to put himself in front of where I was going, and then he grabs a hold of me. He did it so tightly, I honestly thought he was going to squeeze the ever life out of me. "I've missed you so much. I can't tell you how my life has turned for the worst ever since you left me." Yeah, I guess I could have felt bad, but then I remembered all the awful things he had put me through. I pushed him away regardless, but then he proceeds to push me back, where I ended up slamming into the nearby wall. What proceeds is him beginning to yell at me so loud in his drunken rage that some nearby patrons get up and ask if everything was okay. I take this opportunity to now start backing up, but he grabs my arm for one last time, and once again tries to pull me towards him. I remember biting his arm so hard I could actually taste blood. He then immediately let go of me, and I ran over to the people who came over to check up on us. My ex then begins flailing his arms around in the air, like one of those inflatable balloons you see at car dealerships, and then he starts saying he was going to kill anyone who got in his way. That was really scary, but it seemed he relaxed for a few seconds. Then I saw as he started to charge right at me. Luckily, he is stopped, and he's tackled to the ground by these two men that honestly looked like football players. We did notify the police department, but he did leave before they arrived. Luckily, I am happy to report that I filed a restraining order against him, and from what I recall, he did end up getting in trouble for his actions that evening. Served him right. Here we are now over 8 years later, and Thanksgiving break is just a week away as I write this. I have never seen or heard from my ex again, and luckily life has since treated me fairly well. I'm now married to a wonderful husband, and we have a baby boy on the way in just a few months. By the way, my husband says hello to you, creepy fox, and he alongside myself wish you a speedy recovery. Be well, friend, and all the best. This experience of mine is a little more on the milder side, but that shouldn't take away from something I want to get off my chest. Yes, it's okay to talk to people, and yes, it's even okay to sit at the same table if you wish. However, this doesn't give you an excuse to act like a complete buffoon and imbecile. Let me go ahead and take you back to the time I had this really creepy encounter with these two individuals I hope to never meet again. It was 2018, Thanksgiving Day, and I had awoken with the strong urge to grab myself a cup of coffee at my favorite coffee shop a few minutes away from my house. I also opted to bring my laptop with me, so I could go ahead and work a little on some homework. I was going to be having my Thanksgiving dinner in the afternoon, but in the meantime I figured I would go ahead and do something productive, because trying to be a responsible college student. When I got to the coffee shop, right at opening, there were two other individuals, around my age, waiting to get in line to get their delicious drinks, just like me. After a few minutes of waiting and talking to the barista, I take my seat outside next to the front window as I enjoy the nice cold morning weather and sunlight, and I start getting to work. I was working on a paper for my history class that saw me writing about the Aztec civilization, and thus far, the morning was going fairly uneventfully. About an hour of working on my paper, the coffee shop is really starting to pick up in foot traffic, and all the tables have been filled up with customers. Out of nowhere, while taking a break and scrolling through my Facebook feed, normal-looking man dressed up in your average ordinary street clothing, roughly mid-30s, comes up to my table and asks if he could take a seat. No alarm bells went off, as I just said yes, and he then takes out his cell phone and starts to scroll through who knows what. After roughly a minute, I notice him look up at me, and he begins to stare. I asked him if there was something on my face, and he then starts to get flirtatious, and he complimented me on my eyes. I honestly didn't see what was so special about them, but I thanked him regardless, and I continue with my work. I recall he then started to ask if I was seeing anyone, and that if I wanted to maybe grab some Thanksgiving dinner with him later that evening. I told him I already had plans with my family, and this changes his mood. I begin to see as he grows a bit angry, and he gets more desperate with his words. "Are you sure you don't maybe have some time? You seem to be a very busy girl, don't get me wrong, but if you just give me a chance, I'll make it worth your while." This time I was more firm with my response back, and I tell him to leave me alone. Well, I told him using some more strong and foul language. I just would rather not write it out here. The guy just seemingly gets up and walks away, and I honestly think that's the end of the experience. Nothing really scary about it thus far, huh? That's until about 20 minutes later. I've now put him in the back of my head, as I now begin heading to my car, which is in the parking structure across the street. While I'm making my way over there, I noticed two people begin to follow me. It was the creep from the coffee shop, alongside who I was guessing was his buddy. I remember letting out this nervous laughter as I begin to pick up my pace, and I see both of them do the same. Once I'm in the parking structure, the men are in full-on sprint toward me, and I'm thinking, I need to get into my car now. Luckily, I have one of those Bluetooth car keys that only needs a button pressed to open the door. That's exactly what I do, as I dive into my front seat, just as the creeps are within grabbing distance. The look on their face said it all. They are furious. The first creep is calling me all these names, and telling me that if I didn't step out of the vehicle, he was going to get me out by force. Meanwhile, his buddy is trying to open my passenger side door. These moments seem to have gone on for an eternity as I'm rushing to place my keys into the ignition. What really sent chills down my spine was the fact this creep called for backup. Why did he do that? And what were these two planning on doing as they followed me to my vehicle? It's a really scary feeling, but as I snapped out of it, I pulled away, and I decided to drive toward a very busy shopping center where I called my dad. You see, I was too scared to drive home right away, as I feared the men would get into their vehicle and follow me home and learn of where I lived. I was at least smart enough not to make that mistake. I did make it back home without further issues, and since that day, I have never seen that creep or his accomplice again. I now carry pepper spray and even a small knife with me in my purse for self-defense. I'm just so thankful I've never had to use them in any sort of purpose, so I guess that's a good thing. Hey there, creepy fox, my good man. I got something to share with you that I thought would go pretty well with one of your stories podcast videos. I was inspired to write this out after the video I saw from you, which was the one with the restaurant stories. I'm talking about the story with the crazy customer. Seeing as I work in a restaurant, I'm pretty familiar with scary customers who just so happen to take things a little too far. That's what this experience is all about. For privacy reasons and because I don't want my boss finding out I shared this, not that I really think he cares, I won't reveal the exact location of the restaurant, but I guess I could tell you which chain it was. Sizzlers. Anyone familiar with it? If so, then you know we're known for a laid-back, easy environment. We have a salad bar at hand, alongside amazing plates of food that complement said salad bar. Steak, lobsters, ribs, hamburgers, your typical American cuisine. On Thanksgiving, however, we do change the menu up a bit. Actually, we just add on top of what we already offer. You'll find your typical Thanksgiving foods that one enjoys with their families and friends. At any rate, I was working Thanksgiving at Sizzlers in 2018, and the shift was actually pretty great at first. I remember there was a light rain passing through the town, and there was just this overall feeling of joy and peace. As the night unfolded, we got a lot of elderly folks, most of them being the regulars, and as I served the customers and talked with my coworkers, I remember telling myself, you know what? This is what life is all about. Sure, working at a restaurant isn't exactly the most special thing in the world, but seeing people smile and even getting invited over by some of the guests to join them during their prayers was just so wholesome and peaceful. Honestly, what could make this night scary or worse? It's always gotta be that one person, huh? For real, why is it that no matter how much life could throw these good times at you, you gotta get that party pooper? Who I'm talking about was this gentleman. He was in his early 50s and he had arrived with who I guess was his wife, about halfway through my shift. Right away I felt something was off when he gave me attitude when all I did was say hello and welcome him in as I passed by a table near the entrance. He not only told me to shut up, well, there was another word put in there, I think you know which one I'm referring to, but he then followed it up by saying to wait to be acknowledged before I talked to him. Yup, your typical tough guy. Moments later, I saw the couple walk over to my coworker so he could take their order. He gave him a hard time as well. Kinda sad since my coworker, who we're going to call Jim, is the nicest man you'll ever meet. He's a lot older than me. I was 22 at the time. He was in his late 50s. Reminds me of like an uncle or something. I always felt bad anytime a customer was mean to him since at the time he had recently lost his wife to cancer. But Jim always smiled through. Never let anyone put him down. Well, okay. Thus far it seems it's just been this one little incident of a rude customer. But let's fast forward about 20 minutes later. There I am, I'm doing my usual routine, when I got called over by someone at one of the tables. I didn't see who it was at first, but something about the voice was familiar. When I arrived, it's the dude I mentioned before, and his wife. The man starts to yell at me and he's asking what's taking so long for their food to arrive. I, of course, have to tell him it's taking a little bit longer due to the fact it's a full house. I wish he would have gotten the message, but he doesn't. He starts to yell at me and says that ever since he got here, apparently I was being really rude to him, as well as inconsiderate. Bear in mind, not once in the 2 years I'd been working there at that point had I ever seen this guy. I don't know, but I'll tell you, I tried so hard not to yell back at him. I instead apologized for the wait, and this is when he does something so crazy, scratch that, scary, that I'm left traumatized for the rest of the evening. He perks straight up like one of those meerkats you see in the Lion King movies, and then he grabs a hold of me by the collar. His wife at this point is finally getting involved and she's trying to get him to calm down. Meanwhile, these moments feel like they go into slow motion. I feel at any moment he's going to sock me right in the face and I'm about to be knocked out. Thank God that doesn't happen, as one of the regulars and his friends, all Vietnam veterans and regulars of the Sizzlers, come over and tell the guy to let go of me. He does, and then he starts to curse at them. Meanwhile, I'm trying to catch my breath as Jim, my coworker, and the manager come over. The enraged man, who I forgot to mention had ordered alcohol and had been drinking, thus maybe explaining his already extra enraged mood, does the unthinkable. He grabs a steak knife from his table, and then he starts telling the men he was going to stab every single last one of them. All the people inside the Sizzlers are now staring over at the man, and I could see a couple of people are on their phones calling 911. The man thankfully doesn't go on a Chucky stabbing spree, but instead he drops the knife on the table and walks out of the restaurant, with his wife who's got this complete look of embarrassment over her face. She was apologizing to everybody on the way out. We did have police show up to the restaurant, and people were questioned, including myself and my coworkers. In case you're wondering, they did eventually catch up with the man, and I did choose to press charges. That's now all behind me. I still work at that same Sizzlers, and apart from just some occasional rude guests, Nothing comes close to that crazy and scary customer that we had to deal with on that Thanksgiving evening. Edit. If you do upload this before Thanksgiving or during the week of Thanksgiving, I'll make sure to listen and let you know if anything crazy happens to me on Thanksgiving, since I'm actually scheduled to work on that day. Hopefully everybody behaves. Hopefully. By the way, my coworker Jim, also still working there just like me, says hello and wishes you and everybody listening all the best. Hey everyone, thanks for watching today's episode. So, it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, hasn't it? Yeah, sorry it's been that long. I did post about it here on YouTube, but as we all know, they're they're not too nice when it comes to sharing the community posts, because whenever I post updates, it always seems like they don't end up pushing them out. And it kind of sucks because, like, when I got something kind of important to share, they're like, ha ha ha, nope, we're not going to share it. So I know there's quite a few people that miss the posts and they've been wondering, hey, where has he been and is everything okay? Luckily, everything is okay now. But basically what happened about recording this on November 18th, about 3 weeks ago, almost under a month ago, I ended up pretty much fracturing my leg again. Just the top of the prosthetic part that connects to the femur. Basically what happened was all I did was just walk to get up to use the restroom. Then all of a sudden I heard a and then I just started to have all this pain. And then I noticed that my leg started to get really swollen and it really started to hurt. So long story short, I had my uncle drive me to the emergency room, the same hospital I was at for a month over back in May. And so they did x-rays and whatnot, and they're like, yeah, the top of the prosthetic and the femur pretty much came apart, and that's why you heard that crack and whatnot. So, yeah, it sucks because, I had to go under again. They had to reopen the same cut. They ended up adding an extra part to the prosthetic, so this time around it's going to hopefully be more secure. But I do pretty much have to essentially start the progress all over again with the not being able to step on the leg for a good while. The doctor, honestly, he has no explanation for it failing, because he's done this surgery with so many other people, and unfortunately the giant cell tumors and the surgery, the kind of surgery I had to get done, it's not really something that gets seen too much. And so there haven't been enough case studies to really show like, hey, these sorts of things happen. So I guess I was unfortunately the one to draw the bad card, so to speak. So that's why I was gone for a while. And it sucks because I was going to be uploading some videos after the last one, which was the unexplained stories, but we kind of had this happen. So yeah, I was in the hospital for about I want to say about 12 days, so not as long as the last time. And luckily, the pain hasn't been too bad. I mean, I still had to take painkillers and stuff, and I had to be off the leg, and I have to use my walker again and my crutches. The one thing I've been having though is just pain in my right hip and my right leg, but that's just because of the weight compensation. So the doctor just said, just kind of take it a little bit easy, try not to walk around too much. And if you do, of course, use the walker. And if you go outside, have somebody push you in the wheelchair. But, hopefully, like I said, things will turn out better this time. It does kind of suck that I have to start over with the recovery again. And I'll pretty much be bedridden and seat-ridden for a good while. But at least it gives me a chance to work on some story submissions and record, brand new episodes for all of you. But let's see what else. That was really the big update I kind of wanted to let you all know about. Let's see here. It is, like I said, it's November 18th. I'll most likely get this up tomorrow, November 19th, if not November 20th, which is Saturday. After that, I believe I do have enough stories to do a field trip episode, so that should be kind of cool. I don't think I've ever done field trip stories, so that'll be a kind of cool topic to do on here. And then after that, so I'll probably record that next week. Celebrate Thanksgiving with the family. And then the week after that, I'll start working on recording some Christmas stories that all of you have been sending me. And I can hopefully get that up on the first week of December. And then I also have some New Year's stories I'll record and upload later in the month. And then depending on what story submissions I get through the month of December, we'll go ahead and do those. And then speaking of uploads, I uploaded a little sneak peek of the animation that I've been talking about for a while. It's done. As of today, it is completed. I'm just waiting on a couple little extra things that I'm having my animator friend add to the episode, just to make it a little tad longer and just to add a little bit more funness. Funness is not even a word. More fun to it, make it more funny. So hopefully that should be up, I want to say maybe beginning of December. It's going to be fun. I think you're all going to love it. If you enjoyed the previous animation with my characters stuck in the treehouse, which was based off the Drake and Josh episode where they get stuck in the treehouse, you're going to enjoy this one. Basically, it's a parody of a scene in iCarly, so that was kind of fun. Speaking of the treehouse episode, the plan at the moment is to make it longer, probably about 2 to 2.5 minutes longer. Basically, I'm going to have an intro added to it, an outro added to it because it kind of ended on a cliffhanger. And then also I'm looking to add another little extra scene in the actual episode. And then I'm going to go ahead and kind of have some things touched up, some of the frames, some of the backgrounds, just to kind of make it a little bit more nicer. And hopefully that should be uploaded, I want to say mid to late January of next year. And probably it'll clock in between 6 or 7 minutes, so that'll make it like an actual, I guess more fuller length little animated episode or slash scene, so that should be fun. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk to you all about. Of course, thank you to the, thank you to the channel members. I'll go ahead and give them a shout out because they're awesome. And they're the ones who have been helping support me all this time. Thank you to our awesome friends Robbie, Corey, Haiti, Ingrid, Spunky the Nutcase, Bo, Rice and Beans, Scott, and Sean. Thanks so much everybody for your support. It truly means a lot, and as you all know, you're all amazing. Thank you also to the regular viewers of the channel who like and leave comments. Every little bit helps out the channel grow so that more people can check out the Creepy Fox and listen to the awesome stories that subscribers like yourselves send. Anyways, that's going to go ahead and do it for me today. I'll go ahead and see you all in the next episode. Take care, have yourself an amazing day, and see you then. Bye-bye.